on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 113 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, like yesterday, I will be talking about a graphic novel that I got from a Kickstarter campaign that I contributed to. This is Ungrounded, the First Revolution. This is, I believe, a 6-issue miniseries by Patrick Gerard and Eric Webb. And there's lots of other people who worked on this book. Brian Augustin, Tom Payer, Dennis Culver, Art Thibbert. You may recognize some of these names of people who have worked on big superhero books that you've read, which is really impressive to me that a couple of guys who haven't really worked in superhero comics or worked for the big two companies, they were able to get some big names who have worked for those companies to come and contribute to this book that they did. And this is largely an effort of Patrick Gerard and Eric Webb, but they got these other guys to do little things here and there. Like Brian Augustin, he wrote one of the stories here, but for the most part, all the characters here and 99% of the work is by Webb and Gerard. And this is really awesome. This is basically a straight-up love letter to the Silver Age of superhero comics. And a lot of people might say, ooh, I don't know about that, especially if you've read Silver Age stuff. Sometimes reading a Silver Age story can be fun and enjoyable, and then sometimes if you try to read a whole bunch of it all at once, it gets a little tedious and you start to lose interest in it. This is nothing like that. This is taking all of the crazy, zany creativity of the Silver Age, and it's applying it to modern storytelling techniques. And I really appreciate the effort that these guys put into this book. I would love to see more from this world. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. That's the downside of reading some of these creator-owned books from Kickstarter, is that because they are not working on this full-time, this is a labor of love for them, it takes them a really long time to do the book. And so once you get a book of this size, it may take another 5 to 10 years for them to do another story of this size if they choose to do a sequel. And I don't know if they do want to do a sequel. They kind of leave it at the end where you could do a sequel or it could end here. It has enough of a satisfactory conclusion that they don't have to do a sequel, but there's also just enough left open that they could. And personally, I would love to see a sequel because I loved what we got here. But this feels like a love letter to the Silver Age of both Marvel and DC. This isn't like some superhero books where you will have a character who is very clearly a ripoff of Batman or very clearly a ripoff of Superman or the Fantastic Four or whatever, and then they try to tell whatever story that they wouldn't be able to tell using those characters. For example, Mark Waid's Irredeemable is about a guy who is very similar to Superman, and then he goes crazy. This is not like that, and personally, I don't have a problem with books like that. In fact, once upon a time, I really loved books like that, and I still like those books quite a bit if they can be done well, but this does not say, okay, here's this guy, and his name is Hyperman, and then here's this guy, his name is Ratman, and then they are basically Batman and Superman, except wink wink, they're not really those characters, but then you read the story and it's basically Batman and Superman. This is not like that. These guys put a lot of time and effort into creating these characters. They really wanted them to feel fresh and original. You don't have a whole lot of ripping off of existing characters from other superhero stories that you've read. There is one story here that has a group of characters who is very similar to the Fantastic Four, but even in that case, it's just different enough that by the time you finish reading that story, you're like, oh, okay, that's not really as much like the Fantastic Four as I thought. But that's really the only instance of that, and I know that's a temptation that's very hard to fight whenever you want to do a superhero story. You kind of want to have these recognizable archetypes that end up just being existing characters that you're changing the name of, when you can work with archetypes, but you don't necessarily have to just straight up steal a character that is owned by another person or owned by another company. And so I really like the amount of time and effort that these guys put into this world in creating these characters. Also, something that I really like about this is that this is several small standalone stories. This is not one 120-page story that just takes a really long time to unfold. This is several shorter stories that kind of all connect together at the end, and I definitely appreciate that. I've talked about that before on this channel, how I always appreciate when an issue can be a done-in-one story, and it doesn't take 6 or 7 issues for one story to conclude. This is the perfect mix of that, where it has standalone issues, but it also has this running subplot that connects all of the issues at the end. I really like that. Even when it's in trade paperback form, I still really appreciate that. I feel like I'm getting more bang for my buck when I'm getting 6 small stories, even though it's the same amount of pages as if I was getting one larger story. But I really like this book, and much like the Copernicus Jones Robot Detective review, I highly recommend that you try to find a copy of this if you can. I'm not sure if this is one where you can just go to the Kickstarter and order a book, pay one of the rewards and then get a book, or if it was a limited thing. But if you can find a copy of this book, I would highly recommend that you buy it, read it, and enjoy it. It's really great. I really love what we got here, and I really wish that more superhero stories were like what we have in this book. So that's about all that I have to say about Ungrounded, the First Revolution. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different kind of video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.